Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on John Foxx's second album called The Garden. This album came out in 1981. This is the second time they've been on. John Foxx has been on the channel. I'm actually doing his reviewing his solo albums in a row. So I reviewed his Metamatic record from 1980, late '79. And I give it a 73 out of 100. I thought it was a very good record, and this one is very close. Um, when looking back after I reviewed it, this one's very close. It was hard for me to really kind of pick a favorite album of the two. It was so close, and for different reasons. Metamatic is a little bit more um, alternative, or maybe a little bit more electronic, maybe a little bit more avant-garde. And the garden sounds a little bit more like an sort of, if John Foxx would have stayed with Ultravox, this sort of sounds like how Ultravox would have sounded in 1981 versus maybe their album called Vienna. Gareth Jones produced this album. John Foxx has such a unique voice. In some ways, he's sort of, in my opinion, he's like the essence of new romantic uh, period music. He's got such a slightly dramatic, unique voice, and it's almost hard to describe his the music, the way he sings and things like that. It's um, one of the things I really like about the music is there's always like a his production and what he gets out of the instruments and some of the timbres and cadences and colors that he pulls out of his keyboards and many of his percussion instruments is just top tier for the time. Like they still sound futuristic in many ways, in a retro way. They still sound very futuristic. Um, he always has such creative and unique keyboard sounds, and sometimes they may not fully go with the song, but in some ways they go with the song so much on a unique level to where it almost sounds like it shouldn't go together, but it does, and it's just kind of like his kind of choices of some of the music in this album specifically is very unique, and especially when you think of like post punk and new wave and new romantic music, like this album blends perfectly the three. Metamac is definitely more craft work, but there's still a lot of craft work improvisation in here and sort of inspiration, even though this is more of a of of an more of a little bit more of a post rock or post punk or even new wave band. Um, this is um, in some ways though it's kind of like the pinnacle sound of new romantic. In some ways, I could say Visage is probably the ultimate new romantic style, but John Foxx has that for me as well, and it probably because of his voice is so unique as well. It really helps the overall album, and just his early works just stand out so much compared to other music of 1980 through like 83, 84. Um, like I was saying earlier, in some ways, it still sounds like you're listening to the future when you hear an album like this, especially like the kind of more avant-garde tracks like Night Suit, um, or Walk Away, or even Europe After the Rain, which sounds a little bit like Ultravox as well. Dancing like a gun is sort of Ultravox in a way. So of course, you kind of get those comparisons. With this period, you kind of compare him to Ultravox, but I feel like The Garden is probably the closest thing to what John Foxx did of what Ultravox would sound like if he was still with them. There's 10 tracks on here. I'm going to run through them really quick. After the Rain. This was a single on the album. Really like the harmony, the piano, singing, keys. It's also really smooth. 7.5 stars. Systems of Romance, probably my favorite song on the album. Great post punk sound, chorus. It's an anthem with the singing and the powerful his powerful voice on here. I give it 8 out of 10. It's a classic of new wave and new romantic music for me. Then actually it goes to the my least favorite song on the album. When I Was a Man and You Were a Woman. It's interesting, but it's 5.5 stars. I think it's still pretty good though. Dancing Like a Gun was also a single off the album. I give that one 7 stars. Really good track. Pattern Noster is kind of more of an instrumental song. It's my least favorite song on the album. I give it 5 stars. Still a pretty good track though. Um, that when I was a man and you were a woman was my least favorite of the ones that had was more like songs. Pastor Noster is just doesn't really do too much, and it's kind of fairly short. I think it's just like 2.5 minutes, so it's just kind of a break of the album that it's not bad, but it's just it doesn't really do too much for you either. Night Suit. I really like the bass line, more avant-garde sound on here. Definitely a unique sound on here. Probably more in vain with his first debut album. This song is. The keyboards are so key to the track too. They're really nice. I give it 7 stars out of 10. You Were There, I like even better. 7.25 stars. Probably my third favorite song on the album. Awesome keyboard. It keeps rising, and it's really dramatic, and the bass line is great. And yeah, 7.75 stars. Really like that track. Fusion slash Fission, definitely Ultravox sounding on this one. I give it 6.25 stars, and then Walk Away, another strong one, 7 stars. And then it ends on a really good note, kind of leaning more towards what he eventually would go to with making more ambient music. By the time the middle '80s hit and late '80s, and this one's epic, dramatic, it's creative, it's imaginative. Also, it's got you got the deeper electronics and the ambient side to it. It's got some nice atmosphere in there as well, with the title song "The Garden." So I give that one 8 stars too. It's probably my second favorite song. Yeah, really good album, really consistent album for the most part. If you take out the the in between track, I mean, you have eight of the 9 tracks that I think are good or better. So and really, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 10 songs are very good and above. So it makes sense to give the album a very good at the very minimum. When I add up the stars, because of those two low 5 star songs, it's a 68 and a half divided by 10 songs, so 68. So, I kind of factor in that one was a kind of an instrumental break in the album, and considering most of the songs aren't very good, I gave the album an extra 3 points, 3.5 points, and gave it a 72 out of 100. I think the reason why I landed on there is that when I compared it to Metamatic, I didn't feel like it was quite there. So Metamatic I gave a 73. The Garden I gave a 72. And I think the reason is I do like some of the songs on here, but I think Metamatic is more groundbreaking. It's more unique. It's a little bit more. I don't know if I would say it's more cohesive, but I think the highs on Metamatic are a little bit higher than on this album. But this has probably just as many very good, high ranking 7 to 8 star songs as Metamatic does. It's so close between the two, but I think a really strong follow up album, really good sophomore album. If you're into new romantic music and you like new wave or you want to hear something different, you want to hear more electronics in your post punk music, and you want to do it back in the time that it was happening, The Garden by John Foxx is an awesome album. Um, it's a couple tracks close to. If I took those two 5 tracks out, it would probably be in the middle, at least in the middle 70s, probably 74, 75. If they were replaced by two other 7 star plus songs, I think this album would be probably verging on a classic of new wave. It's right there in some respect, but just doesn't quite get over the hump for me. But still a very strong album and such a unique album. And John Foxx, I can't say enough good things about his work in general and just being a very unique personality and unique sound in not only new wave music and new romantic, but then as his career went on into ambient music and things like that, like he's always been on the cusp of what's happening in electronic music, and I always really respect him, and it's I think it's super cool that he comes from this kind of sound way back when, and I mean to think he was doing this music in his middle to late 20s was just I mean, he was just so ahead of the curve, and again, these some of these songs sound, especially Metamatic, his first album, they just sound so ahead of the time compared to anything that you really put out in the early '80s. This album, Metamatic, make Duran Duran sound like Spandau Ballet. Like, I mean, this is futuristic new wave music. Like Duran Duran was, you know, what you can't even compare them. Maybe the only thing you can really compare to John Foxx at the time was maybe Japan. Maybe Visage, maybe Ultravox and Gary Newman, but that's pretty much it. When you come to electronic new wave post punk bands, great sound, great album. Can't recommend it enough. 70, 72 out of 100. Very good album. Solid, very good album. Curious to know what your thoughts are of this album. What do you think of? What are your favorite 3 songs of this album? What's your favorite John Foxx album? And what's your favorite John Foxx album after his early solo career? Be curious to know what you think are some of his favorites. If there's something out there that you'd like me to review, whether it be your music or something else, a band out there or an album or a song, my email is below. Just shoot me an email. Tell me what you're interested in hearing me review, and I'll do my best to critique it, and we'll have some fun with it and listen to it and score it. All right. Thanks so much for listening and watching.
When